Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We were talking in this session about how local banks are dealing with the challenges that SMEs are currently facing. My name is Jan Ward, and I'm the CEO and founder of Corrotherm International Group. We are a supplier of heat and corrosion-resistant equipment to the oil and gas industry. Our company is a medium-sized company, and we've been active in the Middle East for over 35 years now. And so this session is of particular relevance to my company, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from what our expert panel has to say today. For all the efforts by states to intervene and support their private sectors, the real impact of the pandemic has been felt much harder by smaller organisations. Measures introduced to relieve the pressures facing SMEs, including lowering or suspending fees for licence renewals, the reform of employment regulations to enable greater flexibility, and specific programmes such as the Targeted Economic Support Scheme have all helped. But the challenges are frequently greater for SMEs in comparison to larger companies. This has also been the similar story for local smaller banks, who tend to be less capitalised and often exposed to local SMEs than larger institutions to a greater extent. This session, we have been very fortunate to bring together representatives from all sides to look at the landscape, in particular at SMEs in the region at the moment. And with us, we are fortunate to have a great panel to discuss this. Can I ask the panelists now to introduce themselves and please say a little about their organisations? Starting with you, Rehan.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Rehan. I am heading the Business Banking Division of National Bank of Fujairah. It's a dedication division started in 2003 to support the SMEs in UAE, and we have been supporting this important sector of the economy for almost more than 10 to 12 years now in a very sustained manner. Thank you.
Christina.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, my name is Christina Struller. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs for the Indian subcontinent, Middle East and Africa at UPS. I'm thrilled to be part of the GDR MENA event today. Thank you so much for having me, Jane. For those of you that don't know UPS, we are a transportation and logistics leader. We're offering innovative solutions to customers, big and small size. UPS is headquartered in the United States in Atlanta, and our regional office is here in Dubai, where I'm based. What you might not know is that we actually move 3% of the world's GDP through our network every day. Global trade is sometimes very difficult to visualize unless you visit our world port in Louisville, Kentucky, the home of our UPS airline, where you see our 387 planes taking off every day and where we sort more than 400,000 packages every hour. It's quite impressive. Globally, 21.9 million packages across 220 countries and territories every single day. With our wide and global scope, we take a keen interest in growing international trade relationships. And that's why events such as the GDR MENA and those centered around SMEs are vitally important to UPS. We began a century ago with a $100 loan to jumpstart a tiny messenger service. And we have kept the small business mindset until today. From being a very small company, even a startup 113 years ago, we now come a long way, and we have more than 450,000 employees around the world. And supporting small enterprises is central to our purpose of moving the world forward by delivering what matters. And I like to emphasize that we need to enable all small enterprises to be able to gain the benefits of facilitated trade. After all, the more products being shipped across the country around the world, the more customers we can serve too. Because when trade is easy, more trade can happen. It's pretty simple. And that's why we engage with SMEs, especially those that are women-owned. I will provide more details later about our women-owned businesses and our initiatives. And thank you so much for having me, Jane.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. Betül.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, GCR, for having myself and FCI once more in the Middle East. My name is Betül Kurtulus. I am the Regional Director of FCI, responsible from Central Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe, and the Middle East. Let me say a few words about my company. FCI is the representative body of the receivable finance industry, or core businesses, receivable finance, factoring, invoice discounting, and also payable finance, reverse factoring, and Islamic international factoring. We have 6 members in UAE and 2 members in Saudi Arabia. And all over the world, we have 400 members in 93 countries. So SMEs, of course, is our core focus, because our members' portfolio, especially in the developing countries, having an SME on more than 90%. So it is good to discuss today with you the difficulties of SMEs and how they can benefit from the receivable finance instruments.
Thank you, Betül. And Khaled.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Khaled Albasias. I am the Chief Country Officer for Greensill Middle East, a new joint venture based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, looks after the Middle East. I've recently joined the company. Greensill is a financial technology company based in London, the largest global provider of working capital financing globally, with well over 160 countries where we have financed, and we're present in multiple countries in China, in India, in Saudi, in the US, and that's what we do, really support small and medium businesses as well by doing indirectly supply chain financing and other solutions. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, thank you, Khaled. So we have a tremendous panel here, and I think this is going to be a very, very good session. First of all, I wanted to address a question to you, Rehan, please. The small and medium-sized enterprises in the MENA region are a cornerstone of those economies. They account for over 90% of all businesses and provide a huge source of new job creation and contribution to the economy as a whole. So what part do you feel that the bank should be playing in supporting SMEs?
Yeah, thank you. You're absolutely right. And banks here in UAE have realized the potential and the contribution of the SMEs and how they are contributing in generating to the GDP of the country, as well as mobilizing jobs. That's the most important thing. And every bank here almost have created a dedicated department to take care of the SMEs, although there is always a debate that the corporate counterparts tend to get more of the facilities, but banks here are trying their best to change this. This is something where SMEs and banks have to work together to make them more financing option available. And we are very pleased to say that government has been very supportive with various schemes like the Guarantee Fund scheme, which is now available to UAE national SME companies. NBF has been at the forefront of supporting the SMEs. We have developed specialized product and services, which includes not only banking solutions for financing, but also solutions, tailor-made solutions for companies to do their day-to-day banking needs. We are a bank which are offering various facilities to SMEs companies, even for startups. We have also created something called NBF Capital, which is on the advising side of the company, because what we have seen, some SMEs may not necessarily want credit facilities every time, all the time, but they need some advising bit as well. Plus, we have also developed various products like, for example, pre-shipment financing, which is for basically to procure inventory. We are giving receivable financing, which is post-shipment financing to help generate cash flows. Then we give expansion facilities in the form of long-term facilities for factory build-up, for warehouse, for labor camp as well. And one thing what we have seen, SMEs here in this part of MENA, they are very active subcontractors. Now we have seen this region having a lot of oil and gas related projects. The big ticket ones go to the big companies, but they subcontract a lot of these projects to the SME companies. And as banks, we are participating actively to support the SMEs to undertake these projects, which is very, very critical. As SMEs, they contribute to the development of the contracting companies as well as the bigger projects as well. And that's how they generate revenue as well. What we have seen in the last 1 year due to the COVID, SMEs have really been impacted hard, some probably more than others, like the SMEs who are related to travel, who are related to tourism, who are related to restaurant business. We have seen they have been impacted more than the others. And what we encourage to these SMEs that they come forward to discuss their issues with the banks. Central Bank of UAE has been extremely supportive. They have given additional deferral to SMEs to pay the liabilities. There has been deferment in principal payments. There has been deferment in interest payments. And on top of that, what banks have done here, especially our bank, wherever more new funding is required to jumpstart a business, that has also been provided. What we encourage SMEs also to please speak to their suppliers, to their creditors, because if their cash flows have slowed down or their payments are not coming because of the lockdown, they need to have interaction with the banks, with the suppliers, with the landlords, and see whatever best breaks they can get to sustain this downturn time. What we have seen, markets, they expand, markets, they contract. Very important at this point in time is to survive the downturn. And we are already seeing some companies are doing it very successfully. In fact, let me also give you a very interesting example. We had some customers who were dealing in garments, who were dealing in wholesale trade. And when there was slowdown was there, they immediately realized there was a requirement for masks, PEPs and stuff which is related to SOPs of COVID. They very quickly changed and they realized there was a good opportunity out there. They came and they approached the banks to support them, and banks supported them, and they were really able to absorb this downturn very successfully. Not all SMEs have been able to do that, but always what we have seen in a challenging situation like this, there might always be an opportunities which have to be tapped. And it's best that they should discuss with their partners, as I mentioned, their suppliers, their creditors, their receivables. And when all of them come together, we have seen in a more holistic manner, the SMEs are able to sustain the downturn and also prepare themselves when the markets start open, when the order books reopen, to better serve the customers and themselves.
Oh, that's very interesting. I think what's very interesting about that is it really does highlight this flexibility that SMEs have that larger companies sometimes would struggle to achieve, because they are able to move very quickly. They have small management and, you know, much quicker management processes for decision making. So that's a really interesting scenario that's probably going to help some SMEs survive a bit better over this period. Does anybody else have any other comments to make on this or any questions of Rehan? No, thank you very much, Rehan. I think that's really good. You've been obviously very comprehensive there. Okay, so I mean, we know that SMEs have a particular challenge in these sort of times. And Christina, I wanted to ask you about women-owned SMEs. We know that the percentage globally is between sort of 30 and 37%. But in the Middle East, women owners account for only 14% of all SMEs. And there's a very large unmet need to support these women's owned enterprises. So you mentioned earlier the She Trades initiative. Could you sort of give us some more information about how these needs are being met and how these other organizations could support women to grow their businesses?
Thank you, Jane, for those questions, which are super relevant and very important in the world today. I'm not sure, but if you knew that only 1 out of 5 businesses that exports is led by a woman. So only 20% of all exporting firms are owned by a woman, while 80% are owned by men. I think those numbers are very critical. And knowing that if women and men would participate in the economy equally, global annual GDP would increase by $28 trillion. That is 26% by 2025. We as well know that women who own their own business and export their products are even more powerful economic drivers than women who join the traditional workforce or who launch businesses but do not export. We as well know that women pay 1.6 times more than non-exporting women-owned businesses and employ 5.2 times more people than non-exporting women-owned businesses. And lastly, As well, they report to have 20 times higher sales than non-exporting women-owned businesses. So I see there's a clear mismatch and not enough women-owned businesses tap into the international markets. And that's a really big issue. And there are many reasons for that. We have done surveys in different parts of the world, and the biggest ones included the cultural barriers. They included domestic legislation, lack of IT skills or lack of funding, as well as lack of resources and information which are available to those women, among many other reasons. I'd like to share a beautiful SheTrade story with you, one of many amazing stories which helps us to picture how we create positive impact and support women-owned businesses around the world. Let me tell you about Aisha. Aisha is a lady I met 1.5 years ago during one of our SheTrades workshops in Dubai with our partner, Dubai Exports. That was still the time when we still had in-person meetings. So Aisha traveled all the way from India to Dubai to attend the Dubai workshop. As in 2019, at that time, we haven't launched our SheTrades India initiative yet, which is now live since last year. During the 2 days, she was able to network with many amazing entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, our event partners, and my UPS colleagues, and many more. Those 2 days changed completely Aisha's life as she got inspired and encouraged to become an entrepreneur herself. She traveled back to India, to her home. She's coming from a very rural area in India, in the south of India. And she continued participating in SheTrades webinars, online trainings, and used the many free of charge e-learning tools on shetrades.com, which are 24/7 available to female entrepreneurs all over the world. Using all her newly learned business skills, she started her own company specialized in manufacturing leather goods, such as bags and shoes, which is very common in that part of India. At the same time, it's a 99% male-dominated industry. So if it wasn't hard enough to set foot into that business, but her persistence and support, which we all were able to give Aisha, helped her to succeed. Today, Aisha, who had zero business skills and export knowledge when I first met her, runs her own company. She has now more than 100 employees, with more than 80% being female. And one of her major customers is the global fashion brand Zara in Spain. So through SheTrades, Aisha is now able to take care of her own family and support women in her village. She's as well given back to communities, encourage other women and empowers them to become economic and financially independent. And she's hiring them as well for their own business, as well encouraging them to start as an entrepreneur. So working with driven, excited women such as Aisha is very heartwarming for me, as I can see the big difference we all can make in women's life by simply providing our expertise, sharing knowledge, and guiding them on their journey. Don't think of helping only one Aisha in the big world does not create an impact, but think more of the ripple effect we can create when we do more of those support towards many Aishas around the world. But coming back to your question, Jane, you're right. Women-owned businesses makes up a significant less proportion of global businesses, and especially here in the Middle East. While we can be proud about the progress here in the Middle East, and especially in the UAE, there is still a long way to go. And I think as well, the pandemic shocked up the world and as well kind of delayed the progress in many cases, even rolled back the progress across the world, as women took on far more than their fair share of childcare and family care, with children being home from school and more family members needing care, given that COVID and other illnesses came in between. So the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately been felt by women, with women losing more jobs and delaying careers because of these family care considerations. I see that SheTrades MENA is now more important than ever to support women who are working hard to make the businesses succeed and to bring back all these women who had to leave or take a break due to the situation we are in with COVID-19. SheTrades initiative supports and empowers females entrepreneurs and provides an interconnected ecosystem of different tailored business solutions, technical workshops, coaching and mentoring programs, and a lot of knowledge sharing, which fill the large unmet need of support for women-owned businesses. The initiative as well connects women buyers and suppliers across regions, which is very important for companies who have a supplier diversity program and need a database of female-owned businesses. For us at UPS, our strategic focus is to help those small businesses in high growth markets to succeed, as it helps our business, but more importantly, it helps support the entire economy, creating more opportunities for all businesses. UPS has collaborated with Dubai Export on that and the International Trade Center's She Trades initiative since 2018, so for the last 3 years. And our goal is to connect 3 million women to global markets by 2021, next year. And the more women we can support, the better off we will all be. One of the easiest way for organizations to support women is to join our efforts with She Trades, as well as start programs like our UPS Women Exporters program, which is part of our effort to promote small businesses, owned women businesses all over the world. And we help them to learn more about trade, exporting, and logistics. So our focus is really on the expertise as a global leader in logistics. But I believe that all companies have an expertise where women-owned businesses can benefit from. For example, we work with APCO worldwide to teach women how to create communications and social media strategies, or with PayPal to teach women how to set up a digital business and how to sell online. It is so important to have a payment platform which is easy in order for them to receive the funds and as well for the customers to actually pay for the goods they're going to purchase. Barclays, for example, would come in to provide access to credit, which is really important for those women. And eBay and Amazon would come in when it comes to partnering with marketplaces. So by creating a global program like our Women's Exporters program may not be possible for all the companies out there, but participating in our free events and workshops and actively supporting those women is definitely possible. So now I want to be clear again, because organizations supporting women-owned businesses can't just be a check in the box exercise. Organizations need to do the research and see the benefits, both moral and economic, from empowering women. Supporting and empowering women needs to start within everyone's organization. It must be a commitment of the organizations, as simple as ensuring women have the same opportunities. And most importantly, you can make a company policy to use women-owned businesses whenever possible. At UPS, we are committed to equality and diversity and inclusion and to deliver what matters for all our stakeholders. In the short and in the long term, empowering women, we see that as supporting women-owned businesses is not only the right thing to do, it's a smart business decision as well. Thank you, Jane.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there. Christina, could I ask you how you managed to make contact with these women, with women that basically already have a business maybe, or want to start a business? I mean, is there a particular route for those women to make contact with UPS to start with the She Trades program?
Absolutely. All the women worldwide have access to the webpage with the shetrades.com. It's free accessible for all women-owned businesses, and they can register, and then they have access to all the free tools. If it's webinars, if it's recorded sessions, technical workshops, it's pretty simple, and it's again, it's accessible for everyone. I encourage every woman to use that tool.
Oh, thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments they'd like to make about women-owned businesses, or any questions they wanted to ask of Christina? Okay, well, you've obviously covered.
I just want
Betül,
to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is there any turnover requirement? I mean, is there any turnover that you require to support them?
It's a very good question, Betül. No, it's not, because we even start with women who are just going to start off the business. Some of them never had their own business, but we help them to kind of become that startup and then becoming the SME and growing their own businesses. But then again, coming back to many organizations here, funding is very critical, and we see that a majority of the funding doesn't go to female-owned businesses. So it's really important for banks to give loans to women-owned businesses.
Yeah. And I do wonder if part of the issue with SMEs in general and women in particular, women-owned businesses in particular, is the size of their requirement. Quite often, financial institutions don't want small deals, the sort of small deals that these businesses need. I mean, I think that's an issue for most SMEs. So I do think that is also an issue that the finance industry hopefully will be recognising and will be doing something about, because I in my own experience, I've had issues with trying to raise a small amount of money to get something started, and the institutions feel that there's too much expense involved in doing just a small amount of loan or investment. So, but that's something that could be debated for quite a while. I think it's something we could talk about for more than an hour for sure. So, Betül, could I Yeah. Could I move to you, please? I mean, as we've seen, the SMEs are facing this big challenge. And there's lots of different ways that they could finance their businesses. But with the situation as it is now, it's even worse with the COVID crisis. Perhaps you could tell us a little about how the factoring organizations are supporting business at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. It is, yeah, of course, for the women perspective, there's lots of things to do, but it is almost same for the SMEs, and SMEs is for themselves it is important, but for our economies, SMEs presence is very, very important because the SMEs play a major role in most of the economies, particularly in the developed countries. According to our statistics, SMEs represent about 90% of the total businesses on the trade and 50% of the total employment worldwide, and they contribute up to 40% of the GDP in emerging countries. So SMEs finance, their investment is very important for all of us. So we are witnessing their difficulties. So we just prepare some very short videos for giving information to the SMEs that there is a way to find an investment opportunities and finance during especially for the crisis time. So before answering your question, I would like to share this video with the audience. If images possible.
Well, factoring protects a lot of our clients and was very helpful during the last crisis. First, it brings liquidity, oxygen for the day-to-day solution a company really needs. And then security, because it's a protection against insolvency. So at the end, factoring is really, really mandatory for companies that suffer, especially during an economic crisis. So liquidity, security, and then cash collection also can be really helpful for SMEs that can't have the possibility to do it internally. So this is a way to have a safe and secure company to do it. We offer the best working capital solutions, and maybe better than our banks, because we are really so near to our clients, so near to companies, so near to clients and debtors. We are in the working capital.
Okay, so thank you. So it is factoring is one of the safest tool for financing, especially in the crisis time. So what happens in crisis or in the recession times? Commercial banks pull the credit line on SMEs with almost an immediate effect. It is a fact we see in the markets, and it is a repeated fact. In all the crises, we see the same effect from the commercial bank. They become more conservative and pulling the lines on the SMEs. And SMEs are more vulnerable as they are selling mostly on a very short term. And for the banks, it is easy not to revolve the credit lines on SMEs. And usually this happens at the beginning of the crisis. So usually they are immediately out of the credit lines since the beginning of the crisis. So that's why factoring steps in, because of the strong operational control, strong risk control, and factoring transactions underline usually the knowledge of the transaction and understand the real economy. In factoring operations, we are taking the assignment or buying the receivables as a collateral. And in factoring, the receivables of the companies are collateral. So this is a real trade. So the companies do not need extra collateral to reach financing. This is very important because usually they do not have an extra collateral. And as their receivables increase, the funding also increase. Factoring is so from that point, factoring is an alternative financing tool during the crisis time, and this is statistically also proven. So not only just banks are pulling the credit lines, and also the companies are looking for the alternative sources of liquidity during the crisis times. So what extra happens in the crisis? Commercial risks are increasing, especially on the buyers. Bankruptcy risk is increasing. There's a need for working capital because of the increased risk. The funding rates also increasing, and so all this makes factoring much favorable product. Because of the guarantee services, factoring prevents the credit losses, which is very important. So if you need to manage your trade better, you can use factoring. For example, if the SMEs in the MENA region exporting to the developed EU countries or US or even in some of the countries of Africa, why not doing factoring to prevent their credit losses? Because mainly in the developed countries of Europe, in US or in Africa, there are very developed factoring infrastructures. If the trade is an open account, and factoring is the ideal tool for the credit risk and to reach the finance, and SMEs are selling usually on a very short term maturities, like 30 to 120 days. And so many factoring companies are volunteer to take the risk on the buyer. Even the insurance companies, there is a high reduction on the buyer's credibility, bankruptcy risk is increasing. So they are pulling the credit less risk on the buyer down, but it is on the factoring, some of the factoring companies, because of the maturity and they know the trade, they really perform extremely well during the crisis time. So it is also liquidity. For me, liquidity will be an issue for 2021 also, and it will continue to be an issue. And for SMEs, even for the big corporates, different funding sources to ensure the liquidity is also essential. Our main product is non-recourse factoring with the credit protection. On the total worldwide turnover, 42% market share is coming from the non-recourse factoring. This protects the both on the buyer and the seller side, and also the total industry. This product is protects the industry. It minimizes the credit risk on the buyer when we compare the credit losses in factoring industry. The average loss ratio is 5 times more in traditional bank lending. So factoring is a much more safest product in general, but especially in the recession time. What is my expectation for 2021? Collections will continue to slow, it's for sure, and terms of extension will rise, and we will see the dilution risk will also increase. And also the increase in the funding risk. All this together makes factoring more favorable product during the COVID-19 effects and the recession.
Thank you, Betül. I think one of the things that I've certainly seen happening over this last year has been, with the drop in oil prices and COVID in addition, in this particular region especially, what has happened is that SMEs have been squeezed from both ends, as you say. So customers are paying later and suppliers are demanding less or demanding upfront payments, pro forma payments, but also are reducing credit limits as well. And so they're certainly in the supply chain, when you're looking at SMEs that are supplying the larger companies, they are getting this squeeze from both ends. And I think the trade finance, where, as you say, it's viewed as being far more secure, I think that's going to be extremely helpful going forward, as well as in this last year. And hopefully the products will start to develop better than they have up until now. Because I think this is going to last for probably some time now before we get to the situation where the liquidity starts to flow again. So that's a really, really interesting point, and I think maybe we'll come back to that later on. Khaled, perhaps I could turn to you now. You've been very quiet up until now, so maybe we can give you a chance to speak. As we've discussed already, I think every sector of the MENA's region's economy is going digital, and with especially to a view to reducing costs, I think. and finance absolutely has been no exception. So as one of the world's leading fintechs at Greensill, what do you think the next generation of tech-enabled finance means for SMEs in the region?
Thank you, Jan. And I am a very talkative person, so thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'll probably spend the rest of the time just talking. So thank you. And thanks for everyone, our audience, for joining us today on GTR. I think the problem with the current system of credit encourages a global culture of late payment, and it's cumbersome, outdated, and it's expensive. Clearly, that we have seen, especially amplified in the COVID-19 situation. That means really elite, large blue chip color corporate have access to preferred rates, whereby small and millions of small and medium businesses owned by people just like you and me have a disadvantage access to such attractive rates. And it's clearly banks, when they do their risk-weighted assets, they look at your risk, and obviously small and medium businesses tend to be in the higher risk category. Therefore, their access to liquidity is a bit more expensive. Moody stated that there is 56.8 trillion US dollar working capital trapped either in invoices or inventory or bank vaults, and that's really a very large sum. To give you an example, in 2018, in UK alone, 50,000 small and medium businesses went bankrupt because of the delayed payments, which is a very substantial number, and that's in the UK alone. We address this in Greensill, where we, as a fintech, make use of finance as a fairer by removing barriers to provide access to cash to all businesses at preferential rates. That was only accessible by blue chip corporates and government to such an attractive rate. With our solutions and financial technology driven optimizations, we can allow small and medium business access and attractive rates, whether in our supply chain financing or other products and services we have. We financed around 143 billion US dollars in working capitals to more than 10 million customers across 175 countries. We accelerate the money down into the real economy, something that government have always struggled to implement, where we allow small and medium business monetize their receivables and access an attractive rates. So that's really where technology can be employed in the next generation to harness data and technology to create a moving picture of invisible risk in real time, rather than outdated credit and risk assessment that looks at historical data. We can look forward the future, and we can monetize that future. Greensill has a strong history of working and implementing approach in the MENA region, most recently going into a relationship with the Public Investment Fund here in Saudi Arabia. And just to give you a perspective, in the Saudi economy, 22% of the GDP in Saudi Arabia is contributed to by non-oil GDP small businesses, and they only receive around 6% in loan volume from the banks, which is substantially small when you compare that to the larger corporates. So access to liquidity by small and medium business is still a struggle, and we think by employing technology-driven platforms, ideas, products and services, we can allow small and medium business access to alternative liquidities, which wasn't really the case in this part of the world for a long time. So that's where we see technology really employed to allow disadvantages for small and medium business accessing such large liquidities. That's a nascent trend in Saudi, and we're here to bring and support that, obviously with the help of our investors and banks locally, regionally, and internationally. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks very much, Khaled. Okay, I think that's a really, really interesting thing, the tech side. Can I sort of throw this open to each member of the panel and just to have some comment from you and some words from you about how you feel that the tech sector, the fintech sector, is being used in your organizations and in your sectors, and how you think potentially that's going to affect things and maybe grow. Perhaps I could ask you, Rehan, first.
Yeah, that's a very important point, Jane, which you have raised. In fact, what banks are doing increasingly, we are tying up with fintech companies. Instead of reinventing this wheel, which is already there ourselves, we are actively tying up. They are providing payment solutions to the customers and in a cheap manner to bring the cost down, which is really helping out the customers. And one more thing on the fintech platform, what we have seen in the last 1 year where so many changes are coming in the way SMEs do the businesses. In addition to your normal business, start looking at these companies which are providing you fintech solution or the platforms. For example, if you're selling your goods through a normal debtor structure, you can continue to do that, or it might see a slowdown. But currently now in various economies, especially in MENA, now there are platforms available which can facilitate you, which can help you in selling your goods. They have, or some have been very successfully created a big marketplace for them, and they can introduce these SMEs to that marketplace where they can offer their product and goods and services. So
Oh,
fintech is really playing a very important role, and banks and SMEs both are benefiting from this.
yeah, very, very interesting. So, Betül, could I ask you about trade finance, how fintech sort of fits now?
Yeah, the fintechs are they're doing quite how can I say quick and fast solutions in almost all countries. I'm responsible for 45 countries, and I see very supportive fast solutions from the fintech companies. So the especially the small banks, medium-sized banks, they're working with the fintech companies, and they're also in the market. They're serving the clients directly. But what I see from the markets, the regulatory side, they are not that fast to adopt the regulatory side of the this business to as fast as the fintech companies. The main problem for the regulation is we need for the success of the feedbacks and prevent the fraud cases. We need essential databases on a country basis. This is very important, especially for the international trade, because the fintechs are finding solutions only for the corporate in the countries. But when you're talking about the international trade, the centralized databases that all fintechs, banks, and the clients can use, it's very important. But it is fintechs, so there are very good solutions. Even in some of the countries, I see that with the support of the fintechs, the in an hours the companies are providing funding for the SMEs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that speed and connectivity is very important.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very good. This is very good solutions we are seeing in the market.
I mean, Christina, I think certainly for UPS, tech in general really is absolutely key to the success of UPS's business. But I wondered if you find that women-owned SMEs, which you were specifically interested in through She Trade, do you feel that really does make a big difference to how those businesses can run?
Thank you, Jane. It makes a huge business difference, especially now seeing the time how it came through COVID. E-commerce is completely thriving. We have seen a huge boom in e-commerce businesses, and as well, that's something what I believe is going to stay. That's a trend which is going to continue, and technology is key, especially looking into my market with 70 countries, including India and Africa. Sometimes it really as well comes to the point that women don't have even access to internet. So the basics need to be there. And then obviously technology plays a huge role for them to scale the business cross borders.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. So I wanted to ask each of you very quickly, if you can, to say to the audience, what one particular takeaway of an action would you like to leave them to do in terms of what we've been discussing today? So could I start with you, Betül, first?
Okay. Yeah, of course, we are talking about the effect of the COVID. This is the COVID crisis is not a financial crisis, at least. It is not that bad as it is in 2008, 2009. But the effects are not minor, even on the banking system, even and also the corporate ones are also on the SMEs side. So I want to once more remind that banks must definitely present factoring as a product to their customers. I think it is important in terms of product diversification, especially when providing services in the SME segment. Factoring must be on their table. And
Okay.
for the SMEs, I suggest, especially the SMEs that they are doing international trades, to have factoring as an alternative solution for their all financial needs.
Thank you. Well, we have probably only a few seconds left, so I could ask you very, very quickly, Rehan. What about you? What would you say is the one takeaway for the audience?
Very quickly, for SMEs, please speak, engage to your respective stakeholders, your banks, your suppliers. If you're living in a rented property or a rented business place, speak to your landlord. Try to take deferral. Try to see whatever cash flows you have, you can manage. That's the best thing. The idea is to sustain this downturn to the best possible situation. That's it.
Thank you.
Engage. Thank you.
And you, Khaled, what would you say?
I would say if you're a small and medium business, explore how you can optimize your working capital, looking at your receivable, payables, and exploring financial technology partners that they can support you with that. It's not just the direct lending that you should be looking at.
Thank you. And Christina, finally, just in time, I think.
For us, it's really supporting SMEs and women-owned businesses crucial to move our world forward and to capture international growth opportunities.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody today for listening. I'm very sorry we didn't have time for all the questions, but I think we have had an extremely interesting and useful debate. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.